It's my great pleasure to introduce you now to Kate Farmer, who is the Senior Clinical Advisor for PulseGuard, and she's going to be sharing with us a little bit about this unique piece of equipment and how it can support those people and families living with epilepsy. Thanks, Kate.
Hi, so thank you very much for inviting me today to speak to you guys in Australia. So I just thought I'd start with telling you a little bit of background behind why PulseGuard was developed. So it was developed 7 years ago exclusively for my brother Tom, who has Dravet syndrome. My dad developed it because at the time there was no monitoring device on the market that could detect his tonic seizures, and we were missing up to 60% of his seizure activity. One night we found that with all of the devices that we had with video, audio and movement, we'd missed a real prolonged seizure where Tom was face down, and it was that realization that we could have lost him. So we looked into various different signs and symptoms that Tom had, discovered that his heart rate changed with every single seizure that he had, and through research we found that the heart rate changes associated with seizures went right back to clinical studies to 1982. So we started looking more in depth for all of the clinical studies and found that 95% of people who suffer from epilepsy will have a change to their heart rate at the onset or just prior to a seizure. So PulseGuard was developed. It was only ever meant for Tom, and it kind of snowballed from there, because once Tom started using it, other people at his specialist epilepsy school started getting wind of what this monitor was and asking for copies of Tom's monitor. And then his consultants at King's College Hospital in London sort of really pushed my parents to develop it as a monitor. So in 2014 we launched our small family company. My brother is a software developer and has written all of the software for PulseGuard. My background is 15 years in the NHS ambulance service, and I've gone on to do further training in epilepsy, and my dad is an electrical engineer. So we'd set up a non-profit organisation to help other families like ourselves safeguard their children like we safeguarded Tom.
That's wonderful. So are you happy to show us the product and have a little bit of a look at what it looks like?
Absolutely. So if I just flip the camera. So this is PulseGuard, and this is the home screen. So when you first switch on PulseGuard, you will see that it comes up and shows the diary log, the PulseGuard program and the instruction manual. Now, the very first time you start PulseGuard up, it will go into a walkthrough tutorial. So when people first set it up, they generally don't like looking at instruction manuals. And so we will get phone calls saying, I don't know how to set it up, I don't know how to do it. So by doing this, they literally flick through, it takes you through each stage, tells you how to set it up, and then you're good to go. So when you're first using PulseGuard, we say to set the lower limit to 40 and the higher limit to 200. Now in the settings, you can either do it by a slidey scale, so it goes up or down, or you can tap on it and actually input the heart rate number that you want, so it can be completely unique for each individual. The first time you use PulseGuard, up in this top corner, it will tell you what the heart rate has dropped to and what the heart rate has gone up to during the whole night. Now, we're hoping that that first night, if you don't have a seizure, it's very easy to work out what your averaging heart rate is and then what the limit should be set for your PulseGuard, so that it's going to alert to a seizure with the spike in the heart rate, but you're not going to be getting false alarms from natural fluctuation of the heart rate. And we advise not to set the lower limit any lower than 40, because as soon as the heart drops into the 40s, you're in cardiac difficulty, and that gives you plenty of time to get clinical assistance and get some help. So PulseGuard comes as a complete set. The tablet is completely maintained by ourselves, and we offer a completely stable platform. We can remotely log on to the system anywhere in the world and fix software issues anytime, day or night. The sensor can be worn on the wrist, the ankle, the upper arm or the upper leg, and it's being used right down to neonates being discharged from NICU in UK, and they actually remove the sensor in the strap and crate bandage it to the upper thigh. So it's suitable for all ages. The sensor is completely waterproof, can be used in hydrotherapy pools, in the showers, in the bath, so it allows for more independence, particularly we found for teenagers when they want to start showering by themselves without having necessarily a mum or dad or a carer in with them. It's given that freedom that the carer or their parent can stand outside the bathroom door with the PulseGuard monitoring them, and it gives them that chance to actually shower by themselves without having someone watching them. So it's really simple to use. All you do is switch the sensor on. Once the light turns to a flashing blue like it is now, it means it's found the heart rate. You're then ready to press connect. It will come up saying searching, and then it will pick up the heart rate, and that's as easy as it is. So once the heart rate levels are set, you don't have to change the levels every day. It stores it for you and remembers it. Now down the bottom you'll see it's got the running line, and this is a split second, tells you exactly what the heart rate's doing. And we put this in because sometimes during the night, if people have a lot of electrical activity going on, they can get spikes in their heart rate, and their heart rate can go up and down, and people can come in and go, well, the PulseGuard was going into alarm, it's back to normal by the time I've got in there, what on earth is going on? So by having this line along the bottom, it allows you to scroll back and you can see if there was a sudden spike in the heart rate or a sudden drop in the heart rate that triggered the alarm without having to download the data. So when PulseGuard goes into alarm, I'll just trigger it into alarm for you now. The heart rate will turn red in the middle to say that it's breached either the upper or the lower parameters, and it will either alarm through the tablet or it will alarm through its dedicated paging system. So you can turn the sound right down on the tablet so that it's not going to disturb the child, but it will alarm through the paging system for the parents. And this is a fail-safe paging system. It will tell you if the PulseGuard has disconnected, if the tablet has been left unplugged and suddenly gone flat, if the sensor has disconnected, and if it goes into alarm. So it's a completely fail-safe system. The pager has a 450-meter range, so the parents can walk anywhere within their home and garden and still stay connected to the PulseGuard. The PulseGuard tablet has to be within 10 meters of the wearer. So we tend to say within the same room. Sometimes you can have it in the room next door if depending on what the construction of the building is, but you will be likely to have more dropouts of zeroing and false alarms if it's not got a good connection. So we always recommend to have it in the same room as the patient or just outside the room, either wall mounted. If they're prone to kind of pulling and destructing things, then you may want to wall mount it on the door outside of their room, and make sure that it keeps the PulseGuard safe, but they're still going to keep them monitored without having false alarms. Now, when it goes into alarm, you'll see a little countdown clock appears. This is a fail-safe. So for parents who are having a particularly bad night, if they've dealt with several seizures and they're up and down and the heart rate has gone back to normal, so it's turned white again, they've either got the option of pressing rearm, which is what we'd always recommend, and then the little clock will disappear and it'll be armed again. But should they forget to press it rearm, after 10 minutes PulseGuard will automatically rearm itself. So it's that fail-safe system that if the parents do forget to press rearm, it will rearm itself. It also allows for that cool down period, because sometimes if you've had a particularly violent tonic-clonic, the heart rate can stay elevated for some time post-ictal. So it allows the heart rate that time to come back down into the normal range again, and then it will rearm. Now, should the patient suddenly stop breathing or have any cardiac difficulty during this cool down period, it will trigger the alarm again and tell the parents. So it will alert to preventable death, but it won't trigger if the upper limit is breached again, allowing for that heart rate to come back down to the normal level. So with PulseGuard, you have two data functions. So you have the data manager, and in here you can either set the PulseGuard to seizure recording or continuous recording. Now, we tend to say go for continuous recording, because then you can look at a whole night's worth of heart rate and see what's going on. So I'll just click it and we'll switch it into a graph, and I will show you a whole night's worth of data. So it takes a few seconds for it to load. Okay, so this is actually Tom's data on this PulseGuard from one of his nights, and you can zoom out. So pinching the screen with your fingers, you can zoom out, and then you can scroll along and look at what the heart rate was doing. So as you can look, you can see where his heart rate was nice and stable, and then coming up in the evening, he has then had a tonic-clonic seizure, which has breached his heart rate up over 160. So you've got the heart rate along the side and the timeline along the top, and it gives it a split-second breakdown in the timeline through the whole night. And then you can have a look and see how long it took for him to come back down and recover from that seizure. And then he actually went into another seizure not long after that seizure, and it took him quite a long time to recover from that one. So that's a continuous night. If you wanted just the seizure recording, you can look at literally just one seizure, and you can group several seizures. So you could click on several seizures and then look at all of them together if you wanted. So that data can be emailed directly to your epilepsy nurse or consultant, or the graph can be printed directly from your PulseGuard and kept for your records. You also have the diary log. So you have a seizure diary. So every time PulseGuard goes into alarm, you hit silence alarm, you hit seizure diary, it will then pop up, it dates it, timestamps it, and then you can click through. Once you've dealt with your child and you're happy and they've recovered from their seizure and they're in that post-ictal phase, you can then go through and complete the diary. So there's a series of tick boxes for what type of seizure. So tonic, tonic-clonic, absence, myoclonic, drop, or focal. You can decide which seizure it was. If they've got a VNS, was the VNS swiped? If they've got the seizure length is in there, if they're well or unwell, if any medication or their VNS has been changed, and then you've got a note section at the bottom for putting in all of your free text, anything that you want to note about that seizure. And at the end of each month or week, you can do a report, which will then tally up all of your seizure activity for you, tell you what seizure types you've had, and you can print that off, or again you can send it straight to your consultant or epilepsy nurse so that they've got an accurate record of your seizure diary logs and what types of seizures you've been having at what times. So I think that's pretty much covered everything.
That's amazing, is what it is. The level of data that you're able to get is just astounding. So the pager that you mentioned, is that simply like a baby monitor that the parents would have with them?
Yeah, so it's I actually haven't got one here with me today, but it's just a small handheld pager. Yeah. There's a little Bluetooth gateway that sits with the PulseGuard, and that talks to the PulseGuard, and then it talks to the pager, and the parents would carry that around, and it's got a small screen that would tell you PulseGuard activated, and it would go into a bleep the same as the PulseGuard does, and it would then come up with a different message if there was something wrong with the PulseGuard. So if it had lost connection, if it had turned itself off or something, it gives you that fail safe. So you would know the different tone and the message coming up that there's something wrong with the system.
So this really does, I guess, or is designed to work towards supporting those people who have the non-convulsive type seizures, because so much of the technology that we have at the moment is all movement and convulsive seizure based. So this really does, I guess, provide an opportunity for someone who perhaps might not have been able to utilise that technology before, which is fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, it was developed specifically to detect those tonic seizures and the silent ones that are most difficult to detect.
Yeah.
That was what it was for. But it was also developed because obviously Dravet children have an incredibly high risk of SUDEP. And we know that SUDEP itself is such an unknown subject, and we don't know if it can be prevented. But we do know that there is so many preventable deaths in epilepsy that are listed as SUDEP, where the child has been found sadly passed away in the morning, and they may have died from choking, they may have died of suffocation, they may have died of having a seizure and sort of injuring themselves or getting themselves into a position that's caused asphyxiation or something. And even though it's not a true SUDEP, that would then be classed as a SUDEP. And so by having PulseGuard, it's allowing to help safeguard against preventable deaths in epilepsy. But it's also giving those parents that peace of mind, because if they know that they have gone into that child's room, the heart rate has started to drop, and they have done everything in their power that they can to try and safeguard that child, they're not left with the question, what if? And that is a massive thing that we've found for parents, because even if they haven't been able to prevent the death, they know that they did absolutely everything in their power, and they're not left with that constant thinking, if I had something that have alerted me, could I have prevented that death?
And that's the reality, isn't it, I guess? So that's such a powerful thing to have access to. So just to clarify that ideally the PulseGuard is used for at night, so not for nocturnal seizures or the more passive activities like your showering and those kind of things to promote that independence. It's not necessarily to be worn during the day if someone's up and around, and for example, a school child that has absent seizures, it's not going to be great if they're wearing it in the playground, for example.
No, well, they'd have to be within 10 meters of the tablet at all times. But for using it during the day, they would also have to change the heart rate parameters during the day to accommodate the rise in heart rate, and then they'd have to change it again at night. And for a lot of people, it's a lot of chopping and changing and working out what the heart rate levels change to during the day and in the night. So we do recommend it for nocturnal use and for safeguarding in those kind of more vulnerable situations like showering or taking a bath. But for those who are non-mobile, so wheelchair bound, that have a lot of seizures or live in assisted accommodation, then they would be able to use it 24 hours a day. And the sensor actually has a 24-hour battery life with a 2-hour charge time. And PulseGuard can also be linked into telecare systems as well. So if someone lives independently, they can, instead of having a paging system, it can actually link into a nurse call or a lifeline system. And it also has a complete lockdown function. So if someone was to go away for respite care and the parents are worried about the settings being messed about with or data being messed about with, they can actually password protect the PulseGuard system with one simple sort of click of the button, and it then only allows the connect, disconnect, silence, alarm and rearm button. They're the only buttons that can then be pressed on the PulseGuard. Nothing else can be tampered with while they're away.
Fantastic. So the cost of the PulseGuard?
So the cost is £360 for a one-off upfront cost, and then it's £30 a month, and this covers full maintenance of your equipment. So you have no warranty on the equipment. It's covered for life by us. So if anything becomes worn or end of life, we replace it straight away. The only thing we don't replace is accidental damage or malicious damage to the equipment. That would have to be covered by home insurance. And we offer 24/7 remote and telephone support, so we can remotely log on to any PulseGuard anywhere in the world, remotely fix any software issues you may have, or completely reload it. And they also have access to myself as a senior clinical advisor, that they can come to us anytime, ask any clinical questions, and we can give help and advice and help steer them in the right direction if they need some further assistance with their epilepsy.
That's fantastic. So I think we talked earlier, that's around 665 Australian dollars for the purchase. And I think we said around $55 a month, which is priceless really when you think about the security and the ongoing peace of mind that that provides. That's wonderful. Is there anything else that you'd like to add? I think I can't think of any other questions. Anything else you wanted to add? No, but the only thing we needed to point out is you need to bring your own Aussie adapter plug.
Yes, so you need two adapter plugs, one for the system to charge and one for the paging system for charging.
Well, thank you so much for your time, and for those that are watching, this is a very, very early hour for Kate. She's been incredibly kind, and we've got her up at 7 in the morning to meet with us because of the time difference. We're so grateful. Thank you so much for your time, and it's a pleasure to have met you.
Thank you very much for having me on.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.